Hello, this is Pixie doing another video. So I'm just thinking about the Orgone project. It's not too bad. It hasn't quite worked out in the same way as I wanted, but I remember before I had a project and the resin didn't set because I put so many ingredients in it. And you get different types of Orgone as well. You get the fancy types where people have made it more artistic, which is fine, but it looks good, but it doesn't really. It's just like an object of beauty, and the idea is in drawing. It's like feng shui, you draw in sort of positive energy, but it can be fairly random. People just sort of throw things together. Usually you get, well, like with any type of art, you get some sort of insight into what you want to create, and sometimes you might get like mental blocks because you're kind of feeling the art, you're sensing it, you're projecting it, the thoughts in your mind. So it's not necessarily built on pure logic. Like sometimes it is. You put a plan together and say, this is what I want to design, this is what I want to produce, and then you might look at measurements and look at all sorts of other things in it. But that's a different part of your mind you're using there. And so I'm also thinking of new terms and other things. So I've heard psychotronic, as in like technology and psychology mixed together, and there's also probably psychomechanical, in that you need to physically do things with it, and the effect is the connection of the mind to it, because it's about the integration of your environment with your inner space, so your mental thinking. And this is why, you know, pathways for opportunities come from your beliefs, and you know, you can have a certain cynical structure in there, but you should at least be open to try the experiment and see, does it have a benefit, what are the uses, and then you can knuckle down on what works for you and what doesn't work for you. You know, like if people try to invoke things, spiritual forms. I mean, so mine, it would be kind of, if you form that relationship in your mind with an object, it becomes the tool. You know, it's a bit like a screwdriver. And if I say, oh, you can make something with a screwdriver, you look at it and you think, well, what can you make with a screwdriver? I can't see it. But then once you add that mechanics of your mind to it, and you realise, well, if I can push a screw into something, I can put two things together, and then you start building something up. But on its own, it's just an abstract object you'll be looking at, thinking, what do I do with it? You know, what thinking's behind this tool? And then you'd apply it to different things, which you do as well, which is sort of like, you know, opening up things, like a can of paint or something with a screwdriver. So these other sort of things as well. And I think as a man, maybe, or as anyone with sort of a creative mind, you do look to overcome limitations in designs. That's what I think men do. So it's not just like creative passion, but it's also looking at things, how to make, sort of bridge the gaps. And like looking at his Orgone, and there was an issue with, well, basically, if I drill it, you can drill straight into it, but if you start trying to cut it with even though it said you could cut it, it ends up sort of fragmenting like glass. I'm thinking, well, that's not good. I mean, there probably is a way to do it. Maybe I have to heat it up, but it's learning so much about the material that you're working with. Like if you literally warmed it up and then cut it, it might be like cutting butter. You know, it's but the plastics are not thermal. They're thermal setting. So once they've got hot, they set. And there's some other techniques I was looking at as well, crafting techniques. So we're using a flame on it, so it gives it a skin on the surface, so it's quicker to put another layer on, basically. Set your objects up on if you're looking at sort of integrated levels. Depends how far you want to go. I mean, if you make something really pretty, I could just make Orgone all the time, but I'd need a continual supply of things to do it. And there's some others. So originally I had one, and it basically started leaking some of this sort of sticky. It was a mixture between partly set acrylic type plastics, I think. There's one that's used on surfboards I tend to use. There's a lot of different plastics you can use because the mould's silicone. So, but I was doing it for a bit, and then I sort of took a back seat because I had loads of plants in my place, and I got all this. I mean, I've probably got like 5, maybe more than that, 6 different pyramids of scattered around my flat. I was thinking, well, I don't really need any more because I'm actually integrating more plants in there. But I'm sort of wanting to separate, so you've got a pyramid in each room, so it's kind of brings the energy in. And also I've got my massive staff, and that's got a load of Orgone type stuff. It's a weather buster thing. That's what it's really set up for, a bit like. It is, it transmits a lot of Orgone energy, but what you find is it stores it. It's like water or something. It just kind of, well, I guess energy is attracted to itself, and there's a lot of an electric field around it, so it just ends up as a big sort of charged negative ion type form. And how we know this is because when you put your hands on it, you can feel this sort of like sensation, like a little tingle up the spine, them kind of sensations. And I saw a brilliant video actually. I saw something where somebody's basically using Wilhelm Reich's method. He made one of these Orgone chambers, and he made one that was fake and one that was real, and he stuck people in the fake and real. The fake one, people had anxiety in. The other one, the real one, people actually felt more relaxed. And it could be because it blocks out some EMF stuff, and it could be that the current of their own body's building up in that cell, because it's got a kind of, the idea is it absorbs energy, it holds energy in, and it will only release certain types of frequencies of energy through the natural material. So it gets pulled in, gets drawn in, and then it gets filtered out. In the same way, like, I don't know, with water, if you filtered water out, and there's difference between tap water and distilled water, and so you've got like distilled water that's more you can easily absorb it, and less negative energies or minerals in it, and so it's more beneficial for yourself. So that's kind of the principles there. So yeah, it was quite an interesting feedback. So going back to my sticky pyramid, I basically had gold, had turmeric, had all sorts of things added to it. Some things go quite well with resin, but if you put too much stuff in it, it starts to become very opaque. And so if you're looking to put lots of crystals in, it's great you put crystals in, but you never see them again, because they'll be just buried away inside the pyramid. That's why it's sometimes better to put the crystals on the outside. But the idea is you want it to run like a shaft, or use it to draw energy in, or it gets extra filtered through it, because they act like transistors with crystals. They take a charge in there, and then they will release. Well, basically they're a stronger version of metals are crystals as well, crystalline structures in metals, but they're more compatible with light, so you're looking at different levels of frequency. So there's lots to do. I ended up sealing this. I keep drifting from this sticky thing, so I ended up sealing that with clay, and I put a face on it, and it gave it sort of this new identity to it. It still leaks a little bit of this stuff. I have found out a way to solve that, and that would be probably using fire. You just want to use some heat to seal the resin, but it's just a shame it's still got this kind of partially set, and it kind of leaks out of nowhere. So it's like a ectoplasm or something. So yeah, I think it's fairly okay, because I've sealed it up, and that's why I sealed it up in clay, and then I used certain paints as well to bring life to it. So my latest project is probably going to do somewhere down that road, add in clay, smooth it out a bit, patterns on it, seal it in, bring it to life. It's got to have features to it, because if it lacks features, then it lacks character a bit as well. This is a bloody slow truck, isn't it? It's green. What's the matter with you? I must have a heavy load in it. I don't know why it's going so slow. It's got a horse in it, is it? Sometimes it's got our livestock, probably got loads of people in it. one side of the country to the other. So yeah, so I carry on the project. The other issue is that I don't want to end up making too many pyramids in my place, because I need to have a reason why I'm making them. I mean, they're nice, it's just that when you've got so many of them, it's like, yeah, that's good. It's a bit like I've got loads of models down my parents. So I've got, this is another thing as well, it's on the Feng Shui side. I've got loads of books I haven't read, but they're kind of in there. They're kind of I don't know what, I'm trying to figure out, what do they represent? Hidden knowledge, maybe, or something. Why would I have books in there? If it basically makes the place more interesting. Because we've got units that you could store books and DVDs and games and all sorts. And I put models in there, and I put some books in there. And I got bulk buy of books, but I just never read them. I just store them. I'm thinking, you've really got to set that as a goal. Start doing a bit of reading, because you could have a lot of garbage in your place, basically in your shelves. And if you never read them, it's kind of like, well, what the hell's it doing there? So I think it's making a functional living space. That's really what we're working towards, self-improvement. And I think exploring new avenues probably as well. I could look at more to do with Orgone, but I know quite a good chunk of knowledge. You're just creating layers between sort of what's normally more positive and negatively charged. They say kind of positive energy goes into metals, but it's also reflected. So its conductive ability releases that energy, while other things don't, like wool. That's why you get static electricity off jumpers and bolts shoot out, and they're quite powerful charges. So shouldn't be sort of feeling, well, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's ways to do that, but there's a full spectrum of energy that we don't fully understand there. There's different types of electricity that we haven't really looked at, because it was only the commercial science that's driven things forward. You know, that's why we've still got these like hybrid cars. We could have full electric cars, but they're just pulling back on it, because you've got to pay road tax. Someone's got to pay for the bloody roads and stuff. And if it's not emission based, then what do you do? Well, it might not matter if you've got a new credit system brought in, and if the state owns everything, and the state merges with some of these corporations. Like, you might have a license to have a certain type of vehicle, and it might get even more sort of advanced, like, you know, a 2-seater, whether you need a 4-seater. You might turn around and say, well, you live on your own, you only need a 1-seater. So you get certain things put in place based on your patterns of behaviour. I'm a bit dubious as well. At home I've got, they want to stick some sort of new boiler in. It looks like a smart boiler or something. I'm just probably not interested. I recently did some home DIY work on the water heater. So the idea of having it ripped out and having new ones shoved in there, that's meant to cost me more money. I'm thinking, well, is that a good idea? I want something that's going to cost me more money. So I'll probably just avoid it, if possible. Just be out. I just turn around and say I'm not bloody interested. I mean, sorry, but what's the benefit to me? You know, how's it going to improve my life? I just heat the water up manually. It works for me. I don't need timers and systems checking what I'm doing and regulating. And it's about state regulation. It's a bit like the smart meters, so they can look at the performance, look at the property, look at things going on there. And then it'd be more AI type world we're living, where computers would just feed back data and explore new ways to control large groups of people, population. And you might start banding people together based on their career. You know, it's a bit like key workers. They have key worker properties and they just want to fill them with key workers. Isn't that a bit weird? I mean, you can understand they want to encourage people for key services, but it almost suggests these are the people like the nuts and bolts. We want them in one area, and then that zone will be treated somehow differently. Probably will be if you've got police officers there. I think we don't have to do so much police surveillance. And also for a government thing, if there was an issue, they could turn up and say, right, well, we need these type of workers where they live. Bum, bum, bum. So, right, government requires you to support the state in states of emergency, stuff like that. Anyway, this is picture sign off. Actually, I could just drive you into my swimming pool of a car park. This is oh god, I'm in the middle, aren't they? Lovely. This is where your pig sign off and speak soon. Bye.